Hello, my name is Michael Harkey. I have the great pleasure of kicking off a special live panel episode of Cyberviews. Again, this is a live panel, so we encourage you to ask questions. You can do so by raising your hand within the Teams application or submit a question using the Q&A feature also within Teams. It's official. After 24 years and 3 major versions, we have officially named our scene. Finally, we have a name for the convergence of the 3 teams' approach to defensive monitoring with our fully customizable SIEM, and that name is TriGuard. Folks, just like many of you, many of the streaming sites, we've had to add advertising. Want to tell us about that, Dan?
Sure, Michael. So, recently I've seen some talking heads out there saying that there's something like a 20-second rule for voice cloning. If you have 20 seconds or more of audio out there, bad guys may be able to make a good voice clone of you. As you can hear now, this is a clone of Dan's voice that mimics his mannerisms and speech. We want to do this because it exposes our clients to a new and real threat that they may not yet be prepared for. So here at infotex, we've decided to improve our ability to conduct pretext calling by using clone pretexting.
Well, thank you, Dan. You're muted. Is that the real Dan?
Sorry. The real Dan's muted here. Sorry about that. I guess I can say I've been here for 24 years and still have not done a commercial yet, right? Or done an advertisement, because that was not me.
Thanks, Dan. Well, you haven't actually been introduced yet, Dan. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you, sorry, Dan, but for old time's sake, the spreadsheet guru from Indiana, cyber poet, and the founder of Infotex, Dan Hadaway. Dan?
Thank you, Mike. It sounds so weird without the Alan Parsons music in the background. But it is great to be back doing webinars again, and especially the live webinar. And AI is such a good topic for us to do it about, because there's just a lot of confusion out there, about what we should be doing. Is it really a threat? And that sort of thing. And so I'm really, really grateful to 3 bankers who have volunteered to go through the process of being part of a Infotex panel discussion. And if they can turn their cameras on now, I'll let them introduce themselves. Michelle, let's go ahead and start with you.
Hi, I'm Michelle Sloan. I live in Leavenworth, Indiana, which is right across the river from Louisville, Kentucky, so southern part of the state. I live there with my husband of 17 years, and we have 4 beautiful children, and we have 4 grandchildren now.
Now, did you move? Because I always had you from Corydon, Indiana. Or is that just where you work then? Huh?
That's where I work, yes.
Okay, got it. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Good to know. Mike Wade is another banker that has agreed to undergo the panel discussion process. Mike, tell us about yourself.
Good morning, Dan, or Echo Dan. I've been in IT as an architect and an engineer over the last 30 years. I got started in computers in 1979 on a Commodore PET, saving my programs to a 10-minute cassette tape. I have 4 children. I live in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, and work at Lorain Community Bank.
Do you have any of those cassette tapes, Mike, still?
I do not, no. They were fun to put in a regular tape player, though, because it sounded like the initialization from the modem, which kids don't even know what that is today.
Well, my next question was going to be, are they encrypted? No, just kidding. Chris, Fisher is the third banker that is going to join us to talk about AI and information security as it relates to AI. Chris, tell us about yourself.
Hey, Dan. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Fisher. I'm from Lebanon, Ohio. So Cuyahoga is one end of the state. We're down at the bottom. Normally, I tell people we're an exit up from Kings Island. That normally gets people thinking right away. I've been married to my beautiful wife for 10 years now, and we just had a little girl as of about 18 months ago. So that's been a new adventure. So
makes your life meaningful, doesn't it, Chris? So.
You hit the nail on the head right there. So.
Well, what I'd like to do, and hopefully Brian can help us out here. He's manning the slideshow. But I'd like to circle back around to Michelle, and for the sake so our audience kind of has a better understanding as to where each of us are coming from. Michelle, how large is your bank?
About 2.3 billion.
2.3 billion, and it's been growing pretty quickly, hasn't it? I mean, how large was it 5 years ago?
5 years ago, trying to think if that was pre-consolidation or not. I believe we were less than a billion at that point.
Yeah, boy, that's rapid growth. Are you Fed, FDIC, OCC?
We are Fed.
Okay, and that means the state examines you as well, right?
Right, the DFI. Mm-hmm.
And then what is your role at the bank?
I'm risk management officer, and I take care of both information security risk and physical security. So the ISO reports up to me.
Yeah, I remember when I first met you, you also had BSA, didn't you? I mean,
I did.
Hats, didn't you? Well, that's congratulations on that. But can you talk a little bit more about how your role relates to technology risk management? What are you, a technical person, non-technical? What's your take there?
I'm non-technical. I'm more on a governance side of things. So I take care of the information security. I chair the information security committee. I have the responsibility of heading up the incident response team.
So policies and procedures, that sort of thing then as well. And then you're the one that makes the decision if there's been a breach and we need to notify our customers. That would be your decision, with
That's correct.
For escalation and such. Great to know. Thank you, Michelle. And Mike, as the director of IT at your bank, how large is your bank?
We're about 512 million, 6 branches, and we're governed by the OCC.
Wow. Okay. And so when you're governed by the OCC, the state does not examine you. Am I correct in that?
Correct.
There's a few people here from new employees at Infotex. I wanted to try to, for some reason, get that imparted on them. So, but what's your role at the bank? It says and ISO. So that's a pretty wide role for a bank, isn't it?
Yes, I do everything IT across the board. Our IT team is Mark and myself, and then we have specialists for our backend Fiserv, Chris, and we have a specialist for lending products, Gary.
Okay, so really a 4-person team. Michelle, and Mike, I want to come back to you, but Michelle, how many people are on your team if you look at, lending and systems administrators, that sort of thing, as well as the network people and the IT people, et cetera? Do you have a ballpark number?
Well, on my team on information security, we have 4 people, and then on the IT team for network and help desk and everything, there's I think about 8 people.
Okay, so about 12 people total then. Mm-hmm. And so Mike, with a 2-person team, you're the ISO as well as the IT director.
Yes, sir.
And so what roles do you have as it relates to technology risk management?
I sit there, I read all kinds of different blogs One of the things we had talked about earlier are various blogs and sources for material. One that I've run across recently I really like is TLDR, and they have 8 different categories that you can subscribe to, and they put out really good information every day, sometimes multiple times a day. And there is one member of my IT team I did forget to mention, and that's Infotex, which is our 24/7 365 SOC, and they have been absolutely invaluable to us.
Thank you, Mike. That's what that's 5 beers I owe you now, right? So, I really appreciate you bringing that up. But that sounds, it just, I like how we've got, a 5-person team, a 12-person team. Chris, how large is your bank?
So we are 2.3 billion in assets as well, right around that. We just completed our second merger within a 12-month period. So we've been a little busy around here as of late.
I bet. Yeah. Are you Fed, FDIC, or OCC?
We're OCC. We're a national bank.
Okay.
It's been, so one thing that we've seen that's a little different, it sounds like Michelle's kind of got everything built out already. And then Mike is on the other end of it. We're going through that process now where they're making us silo. So we're having to split off that ISO function entirely and kind of stand up a whole new department. So in the interim, as of right now, we're actually using a virtual information security officer to do all our risk, since we're not allowed to be a part of that if I want to keep working on computers. So
who are you using for that?
Currently we're using Jack Henry, so Gladiator.
And so you're a Jack Henry bank, and their subsidiary Gladiator is providing a virtual information security officer so that you can segregate in the network from changing the network.
Yeah, right. I don't know how much I could say, but yeah, we have some changes in place. I don't think they've been announced yet. So
okay, and then your role. What do you do at the bank specifically?
So I'm VP of Information Technology. I've been in technology for 25 years. Not 1970. I was born in '84 though, buddy. So sorry. So not quite as long as Mike, but we've got 12 people within our IT department, and that's not including the risk people. So
okay, so and so if you add the risk people, then how many are you adding?
I mean, roughly, that's what I was trying to do the calculation in my head here. I'd say around 15, 16.
Okay.
Total.
Okay. So it seems like for the audience here, yours and Michelle's bank are growing fast. You're acquiring, organizations. Mike, you're growing as well, and yet I feel like we've got a pretty decent, cross section of, technical person. I wanted to bring out to Chris. You're a pretty technical person. Am I right about that, Chris? Or
I used to be. I don't know if I keep getting policies thrown at me, I keep losing it.
It's all relative. I definitely I hear you there. But I feel like we've got a good cross section. Then Brian, if we can go to the primary discussion points. What I'm really wanting to do, and I had to caution the panel that we just don't dive right in and start talking about the risks, or else we'd be done with this in 20 minutes or whatever. So I really would like to start off talking about the rewards of AI as we've seen them so far. What are we using AI for? At least, we've all developed our architecture plans. And so, what are we using, or what are we planning to bring into the bank by way of technologies that are truly using AI technologies versus those that are, it's almost like the zero trust trash can, right? Where, everybody's saying they're using AI. Are they really using AI, or, are they using ChatGPT to write up the marketing message that they're using AI? But then we also want to kind of talk a little bit about the awareness aspects of, responding to AI. Once we've talked a little bit about the rewards, vendor management, other controls. This is a Cyberviews production, meaning that, it's informal. I wasn't going to wear a hat today, but because I was having a good hair day for once. But I ended up having to change venues, and so I threw on my hat anyway. But seriously, if the audience has any questions that they would like to ask, especially from a benchmarking perspective, just raise your hand. Brian will be watching. Mike will be watching. If we see your hand raised, we'll be able to get you in to ask your questions. We also would like to kind of point out that in our advertisements for this webinar, when we decided to do the webinar, it's 4 or 5 months ago, and so at that time we were going to work up a risk assessment. We've got the first couple iterations of risk assessments, but they're risk assessments written by cybersecurity professionals that aren't working in banks, and so we've decided that it's not ready yet. And so we're going to, actually, we're looking for banks if you want to work with us. We're going to do a 4-person workshop probably in October, where we work on a template, work on a process for risk assessing AI. And so if you're interested in that, reach out or let Nate know. But we do have an AI policy boilerplate that we pulled together, and it's actually in, I don't know, it's 5th or 6th iteration. So, and by the way, since ChatGPT has arrived, we realized that our boilerplates are needing to be taken to the next level. And so we'd love to get feedback from you on the AI policy boilerplate, because we did try to put a lot of extra effort into the explanations as to why things are in place. And I'll circle back around to that if it makes sense in our discussion today. But why don't we talk about the rewards, Brian? I'm hoping you're moving forward there related to information security. I guess I'm going to start with you again, Michelle. What AI are you already using at the bank versus, what AI are you planning to use? Or are you just hoping that, you don't ever have to use it? Where's your bank on the use of AI?
Well, right now we have things like GPT blocked. Of course, we're using something for BSA and, looking at the transactions and things like that for detection purposes. We are looking at starting a working group to start talking about things like Copilot, but we're just at the starting point at this point.
Is your internet banking system using any chat bots or anything like that are AI,
Actually, we do have the chat feature there as well.
And any kind of fraud detection or, anything like that? Or is it just more that's what that working group is going to do, is start rolling up their sleeves to get their arms around the issue of how are we going to start integrating AI into our process?
Yeah, it's the working group is really going to be what's looking at that to see what we're going to do going forward.
Okay. Thank you very much, Michelle. Mike, how about you? How's your bank doing with AI? Are you already using AI?
We're not using AI. And one of our concerns around using AI is how the information is stored by AI and so forth. In the case of ChatGPT-4, anything you put in it becomes part of the model. When you're talking about Copilot keeps it containerized to your tenant, but it's constantly taking screenshots of all of the activities of the users of Copilot so that it can use its mapping protocols and everything so that you can search images, so that you can search information that you've done. So all of that is stored, and the screenshots, the screen scraping. And then the other concern that we have—
That's stored in the cloud, or is that stored in that container?
Well, it's stored in the Microsoft cloud in your 365 tenant.
Got it.
That's what that's how Microsoft is presenting it at this time, but it doesn't, the core AI does not store any information.
Got it.
So, but it scrapes information and stores it in your tenant so that it can be referenced later. And, but my concern about AI and using AI in the organization is we need a manner in which to understand, monitor, and control what is happening on the back end. When I look at a program running on a computer, I can look at the processes, sub-processes, and everything else and know everything that that computer program is doing. We do not have that capability with AI. As Jeffrey Hinton, the father of deep learning, stated, we don't understand what's happening on the back end.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the rub, isn't it, Mike? Is that, you know, we're using an algorithm. Oh, really? How's it work? I don't know. So, yeah. Very good. We'll circle back around to a lot of that, Mike. Chris, how about AI in your bank?
So as of right now, Michelle touched on some pretty good things. So the fraud aspect of it, that is one thing that we are currently rolling out. That should help us quite a bit. Unofficially, we're not really using it as an official. We don't have a chat bot, anything like that. Unofficially though, like, so I've used it to write policies. So like, I just pulled up the policies just because I was like, which one did I use? I had it write a document imaging policy. So, you know, that's something that I don't actually put sensitive information in. I look for a generic policy and then, you know, I tailor it to fit our institution. So that's one thing we've done with that. A lot of graphic making too, a lot of DALL-E usage, or Dolly, or however you want to pronounce it. But not anything more than that.
Have you ever seen a human on a dolly that's got 5 fingers?
Yeah, it has problems with hands, right?
Yeah.
So normally I tell it to put on gloves. So
Yeah, there you go. That's a good idea.
Now I will say we are taking steps to use it in the future. So as of right now, we're building a data lake. So we have a product called JHA No. It's like a warehousing product. And the idea behind that, you know, we're using that in some limited capacities right now. Like right now, I can detect like customer attrition ahead of time, you know, so it can monitor all those ACH transactions. It can alert us and say, hey, you know, this customer's moving money out of the institution. If you want to try to prevent them, you know, it might give us a list or a build out. So that's some things that we're doing.
That's nice. And is that just that's something that's it's a vendor you've already vetted, a vendor you're already working with?
Yeah, that's a Jack Henry product. So when Mike was talking earlier about large language models, this is pretty much an SLM, right? This is a small language model. So this is all contained within our organization. It doesn't leave our premises. So we're able to, you know, keep that information inside the organization. So.
And have you really, I mean, and I don't know the answer to this, but have you tested that? I mean, that the information stays on premise? Is there an auditor that's assuring you that, yeah, we've taken a look at this? You know, does their SOC 2 somehow address that? How do you know that Jack Henry doesn't pull that information off premise?
Well, I mean, from a technical response, it's a SQL Server. So I can get into it from here. You know, it's in the room over here. So I know what's going into that server and what's leaving it. From an audit perspective, yes, we have it reviewed. One thing the OCC has done is they've made us apply hardening policies for SQL Server. So we've done that in the last 2 years to try to, you know, really ratchet that information down and make sure that, you know, only the right people can access it.
So I'd like to ask, I feel like I should circle back around to you, Michelle, real quick, just to make sure, because I know you said that you were blocking ChatGPT on your network. But I mean, is that across the board, or are you allowing some of your employees to learn ChatGPT? You know, how's that working? Are you encouraging them to use it at home? What's your stance?
The only ones at this point that we're allowing use it is our marketing team, and that is only through a tablet that we have given them that's off the network. And of course, the instruction of no confidential information, whether it be customer information or bank proprietary information. But no, we're not encouraging. At this point, we're not encouraging our employees to use it at home or anything like that. We just haven't taken a stance on that.
And are the marketing people using it for images as well, you know, DALL-E and that sort of thing?
I believe so.
Okay. Mike, how about you? Are you blocking GPT? You might have told me, but are you blocking GPT on your network? Is it across the board? What's your stance on GPT specifically?
Well, we largely whitelisted our firewall versus blacklist. So it's not whitelisted, so it's blocked.
Okay, got it. And I mean, let me ask you this, because I'm hearing of more and more LLMs, you know, being developed in the wild, or however we want to say, and there's SLMs, people steal them, and, you know, I mean, whatever, right? And so how long do you think the blocking approach, is it really, are you seeing it more as a mitigating the risk, lowering the risk, or is it, you know, I mean, do you feel like that's all you need to do? Are your employees aware enough that, hey, I'm actually using an LLM here when they go to, you know, some page that, you know, I mean, let's just say, you know, one of the many apps that are front ends to GPT on the web? Mike?
So that would depend upon the application. It would depend upon the application, but that is a back-end function of an application that we would be using or subscribing to. So at that point, the only thing that you can do is communicate to your user community that, you know, they must be cognizant of the information that they are putting into the model and the desired outputs they would like of that model. And we remind everybody that PII, personal identification information, customer information, anything that is not public should not be used in any of those models.
Yeah. And since really the policy there is it shouldn't be used anywhere.
Correct.
Right? And that should already cover that model. Sorry to throw that was a curveball question at you, Mike. It popped in my head, and that's going to happen, right? One last thing though, before I move on to Chris, is are you using Copilot on your network, or I mean in your system?
Not at this point in time. We've had some really high-level conversations around it, but the expense associated with it, and then the other security concerns, such as the screen scrapes and all of that, is causing us to not be in a real rush. And the way the market is pushing all of this has a lot of concerns for me, because all the professionals say we don't really know what it's doing or how it's doing it. And a large language model has to have a certain level of intelligence, because you just can't randomly grab words and throw them into a sentence. There has to be an understanding of context, rhythm, syntax, in order to be able to assemble a meaningful statement.
Very well put. Chris, how about you? Are you using GPT on your network? Is it just specific employees? Who are those employees? Are you blocking it? What's your position on Chat GPT?
No, so like Mike, we whitelist. So we block everything outright, and then, you know, as a need develops, you know, we evaluate, vet, and then, you know, determine if we can allow that. We do have a number of people using Copilot. We did purchase licenses for that just to try it out, you know, kind of get our feet wet a little bit. One thing that I'll mention that we really haven't discussed here, we're looking at other options in terms of detection. So, and when I talk about that, I'm talking about data loss prevention. So we're looking for a more mature DLP product to kind of help with that or help assist in that detection. So like, for example, like, you got those paste bin sites, any kind of customer data that can leave the organization. We want to do a better job being able to capture that. So, and I think that will assist with, AI. So
I'd love to hear how all that goes. I tell you, it's just a constant, does this app have AI in it? And they're all saying it does. And yeah, so Brian, I think we're ready to move on to the next, discussion point, which is, and I'm just going to ask the open-ended question. We'll start with you.
Hey, Dan, can I interrupt real quick? We actually had a question that came out of Mike's input. It was about Copilot from Cory Wigington. Says that using the commercial data protection license, Microsoft says that they do not retain or use data provided after a session. And then there's a quote here from it. In all cases, when commercial data is enabled, Copilot doesn't retain any of this data after the chat session is over, nor does it use the organizational data to train the underlying model. And his real question is, are you saying Microsoft still screen scrapes this information to use?
I think they were saying they screenscape it and they keep it in the container. I feel like what Cory's saying is that it actually deletes it then when you close the session.
Seems like that's what, yes, yeah.
Well, that's good to know. I feel like we better be making a note that we want to have that configured properly.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I feel like there should be, sorry, this is Mike interrupting here. There should be, we should give webinars on, Windows licensing and options, because it sounds like if you have that, data protection, then, you might be in a different ballgame. That's all I wanted to interject with.
Good to know.
Looks like Cory's also adding. Oh, we got some awesome links being shared in the chat, everybody. So take a look there too.
All right, great. This is what I like about panel discussions too. So, what I'd like to do is circle back around to you, Michelle, and ask what scares you the most about artificial intelligence. And
of course, yeah. Go ahead.
No, go for it.
Oh, the main thing is the information security, people not understanding what they put in there is public information, and really being able to control that, the shadow AI that we've already talked about, correlation, just it being able to pick up all the information that you put in the past and combine it together and really understand more and more about you, and that you're putting that out in the public. And of course, when you're looking at some of the other AI models, you have to consider model risk and bias risk, and explainability, those type of things.
What do you mean by explainability, Michelle?
Well, anytime that you're going to be using AI, you have, especially if it was in loan decisioning, you have to be able to explain to the examiners how are they doing gathering this information, how are they using it, and it's very hard, as Mike and Chris have already brought up, it's hard to explain what they're really doing in the background.
That's a very important point. And it also, I can just see a loan customer upset because somehow somebody said the AI has not approved your loan. You know what I mean? That could raise some reputational risk there as well.
Right.
So,
you have to have that human element in it always.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I totally agree with you. And yet I am also, I'm kind of avid that, AI isn't going to replace us. It's going to make us better if we learn to use it. Right. What I'm saying? And so
I agree.
Mike, how about you? What scares you the most about artificial intelligence?
Skynet, Terminator, that kind of stuff. Matter of fact, in preparation for this for this webinar, I spent the weekend watching the entire Terminator series. So
there you go. That's what's scary, is how much time we're putting into it that we probably don't need to.
So the things I really, really like about AI are that it's excellent for evaluating data. So there was a study I read about in preparation for this, where they took 100,000 cases in a hospital, fed it to AI, and then AI developed 8 treatments, which turned out to be effective for correlations it found in the tests and symptoms that humans had not been able to find. So when it comes to data correlation and understanding data, I think AI is an incredible tool. When it comes to some of the things that Elon Musk is doing with Neuralink, and then wanting to take Neuralink and integrating that with AI and the human brain, those kinds of things and developments give me a little bit of concern when we talk about loading self-learning AI into robots and autonomous vehicles. That gives me a great deal of concern. And there was a TED Talk that I reviewed where a drone that fits in the palm of your hand contained a shape charge, and it was programmed with AI to take someone out. And the guy threw it at the crowd. It flew around, spun over, and then blew a hole right through the head of the mannequin. So, yes. And these are the things that we are developing, we're pushing, and we don't understand everything happening in the background.
You know, to me, I feel like what's kind of interesting how this is unfolding is that there's really 2 levels of anxiety. There's the what can we do something about, the anxiety about, hey, are we going to be able to, keep blocking LLMs? And then the anxiety about what the heck are the big boys doing with this technology, and can we trust? And in my opinion, having watched security be bolted on for more than the amount of time I've owned infotex, we can't trust that AI is being developed in a safe manner. So, Chris, I'm setting the stage for you. You're going to have to.
I'm gonna bring it back to banking.
Okay.
We're got the robots on hold though. We're not going to put those out anytime soon. So from an aspect of, I know you're going to touch on this later, but I'm thinking about it now. So sorry, Dan. The shadow AI. What we're most concerned about is the AI that people aren't aware of, because we do have people in their day to day, whatever they can do to make their day easier. Awareness is really important. Michelle touched on that. To make sure that all your employees know. Be careful what you're putting in your applications. Like I can give you an example. So like our trust department, they have a certain amount of professionalism they want to portray. Okay. So they use a product called Grammarly. Well, Grammarly is AI. So, it can read your whole email. It can, suggest, you can change the language, you can change the format. I want to sound more, professional. I want to sound, however. But it's, it's pulling all that information, it's putting it somewhere, it's analyzing it, and if you're talking to a trust client, there might be PII in there. So that's something that, that we really need to reinforce, hey, this is important stuff. Let's make sure that, we're careful with what we're doing.
Well, just so you know, you introduced the topic at a good time, Chris, because right. I think our next slide, Brian, if we want to, I feel like you hit the nail on the head in terms of what scares me the most, at least because I'm like Mike. I really am concerned about where we are as a culture heading, right? But I can't do anything about that. What I can do something about is shadow AI. And it's just driving me nuts. Ask Nate. We found it in our CRM. And we have a policy that before AI is going to be used, we're going to do a risk assessment on it. Well, we were using it and didn't realize it. And the awareness part, by the way, it's got to include defining AI, right? I mean, we're using AI every time we take a picture now, right? We're using AI when we put our thumbprints on our phones. But are you discovering a shadow AI? Any audit findings, Michelle? Any complaints that you're hearing from your network people about, wow, I didn't realize that they were going to turn AI, or, are you seeing any, we use an application called Slack, and we saw in the press that they're actually using the Slack sessions to train their AI. Now, it turns out they're using the metadata for those sessions. They're at first we were really upset by it, but still, unfortunately, we don't put confidential information in Slack as a precaution. But the point being is that where I'm worried is the use of AI without us realizing that we're using AI. So, Michelle, are you running it into that, anything like that? What we've been calling shadow AI or anything like that in your bank?
We have not at this point. You don't know what you don't know, of course, but at this point we haven't found anything. But I think maybe we should do a little bit more in awareness training of giving examples of what all is AI, because I think the general user doesn't think, okay, Grammarly, is that really AI? And it is. Chris made a great point. And until we start training our general users of what all is included in AI, I think we will still continue to see issues.
Well, we're going to circle back to awareness next, but beyond awareness training, is there anything that you're doing currently to prevent shadow AI? Your network team is doing anything, or?
Well, of course, they're doing the whitelisting that Mike and Chris talked about. So if it's not whitelisted, it's truly blocked. So that's the main thing at this point that we're doing.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Mike, how about you? You find any shadow AI? Anything slip through the cracks, or you all of a sudden look at the configuration of an application and there's an AI module? Anything like that happening in your bank?
Not that we've seen pop up yet, but I'm keeping my eyes open, and it's going to pop up sooner or later, I'm certain.
Are you asking your employees, like Michelle said, from an awareness perspective, it might actually be a two-way street. If you see, they usually will put up a little, pop-up window on your way in the application saying, check out our new AI feature, right? Are they informing you when they see that?
For the applications that are currently being used in our organization, we haven't seen anything like that pop up to date. One of the things, we've made an adjustment in one of our procedures because of AI and deep fakes. And typically you would ask someone for their social security number, their mother's maiden name, and that kind of thing for identifying them. And we have stopped asking for the mother's maiden name and are asking for customers to set special passwords. So it can be a password, it can be a phrase, it can be something like that. So, that we've used passphrases with my children and everything since they were in preschool. You had to know the password to be able to pick them up from the preschool or pick them up from school. So the babysitter would know that and anything. So if somebody showed up and didn't know the password, the school would not release the children to them. And we've adopted that similar procedure into our bank so that we can create this password that is unique to the individual.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. When from a pre-texting perspective, having a passphrase or something on file is great, as long as the customer remembers the passphrase, right? So, Chris, thanks, Mike. Chris, how about you? Are you running into any shadow AI or any apps with AI turned on? Or, what I'm noticing is that the apps that we've had, like Adobe PDF as an example, they release some AI features turned on. They were defaulted on. And so we had to kind of quickly get our arms around it and, turn it off until we can get to doing a risk assessment. It looks like some nice features. It's just we're not ready to do that yet. You know what I mean? But are you running anything like that, Chris? Or
so yes, it's hard. This is hard, right? There's no. I mean, there's just the way technology moves. Everything's going to be different in 3 months, right? So we have done a couple things to kind of help at least control it to a point. Like a tip I could give you, like everyone uses Chrome or Edge now or Firefox, there's extensions. So, we approve all extensions. So we're able to, block those through group policy. And then anything that's bank approved, that we vet, that's one deterrent. So it's hard to just block outright, right? I mean, we do the whitelisting, but we do have people that are web approved, and the web approved filter, that those categories are pretty broad. So we need to be better. I can tell you that.
Well, and I can tell you from a monitoring perspective, it's really like what concerns me is it's legitimate, illegitimate, configure it. I mean, in other words, it looks legitimate because it's an app you're already using. But if it's an AI that's reaching out and transferring data to a third party, you guys need to know. You need to, make sure and provide assurance to yourself that that's not happening. And to me, the key control there, Brian, if we want to move to the next slide, is what I've been declaring as the key control since we had to cancel our workshop scheduled for September 12th, 2001, right? That awareness is 9/11 to the battle, that we're far more secure as a nation before or because or the day before 9/11 we were not very secure, right? The day after 9/11, you could not do anything in America. We were very secure, and the only thing that had changed was awareness. And so, Brian, I think we need to kind of flip over, if you don't mind, to the AI policy. I was wanting to use this as a opportunity to let people know that one of the deliverables of this workshop or this webinar is a boilerplate that we pulled together related to AI. And since I really can't see, can I see what Brian's bringing up on the screen? Have you brought it up yet, Brian? Or
yeah. Just about there. Sorry, I had to turn my screen off in order to pull that.
Got it.
I think you're seeing it now.
All right, great. And so, it has the normal boilerplate language. If you haven't used our boilerplates before, you might want to read that. It's the copyright agreement is just basically that when you customize this to your bank, you get to retain the copyright, but we keep the copyright for what we do. But, given that now you can go out to GPT and get any kind of policy language you need, our boilerplates have kind of substantially changed in terms of the value that they can provide to our clients. And so what we realized is the notes about the template section, which, used to be just kind of a short section at the beginning of every boilerplate. And, you'd call us up and we'd talk to you about, how to customize that boilerplate to you. Well, we really kind of focused in on it with this boilerplate. And so I'm not obviously going to be able to go over everything, but Brian, if you can go down a little bit further there, I wanted to point out the excerpts section, because what we're finding, what this policy is for, is that it's a policy for deploying AI in your bank. Okay, so it's really meant to be a board level policy that if you want to deploy AI in your bank, you should follow these high level, policy statements and document and all that sort of thing, right? But who's deploying AI in their bank? I mean, I think we've just kind of demonstrated that if we are, it's our vendors, right, that are going to be deploying AI, and we're going to be very careful about vetting them and making sure we know where the data goes, and that if they're saying it's in a container, I mean, great that they're deleting it after the session. That's good information to know about our vendors. But having a policy to deploy AI just doesn't make sense for most of our clients. And so what we've recommending is that if you look at the excerpt section there, you'll see there's a lot of language that we think should be added into your existing policy set. As an example, every vendor should be asked, what's your stance on AI? That we should not be bringing in new vendors without looking into their AI strategy, and not only from a security perspective, but also probably from a competitive perspective, right? I feel like if vendors aren't looking into AI, we should know why, right? And so this is a free boilerplate. I'm sure Brian's going to make a link available to everybody here. And again, if you've been at this webinar, then you have a free AI risk assessment coming to you. It just won't be available until November. I'm going to myself go back then to the next slide, because vendor management is the last, or not really the last issue. It's one of the last issues we wanted to kind of discuss. And so, Brian, are we looking at the vendor management slide, or yeah? So, well, back to the awareness side. I'm sorry. Is there anything that Michelle, that you'd like to talk about when it comes to what you're doing from an awareness perspective? Are you just adding it into your normal, awareness program, or have you had any special, messages go out, or what are you doing about increasing the awareness of the risks related to AI?
We're just adding it into our normal awareness program. We use Novafor, so we've hit on that. We've sent out email alerts and things, but that's basically what we've done so far. Not a special training that was customized just to us.
Does Novafor have an AI component, a training component, or is it just their fishes are better because they're using AI?
We found once. Of course, they do a series of trainings that are very small, like a 10-minute training. So that's what they've got that we have found so far. But they have a huge library, so it may be something that we just haven't located yet.
Okay, great. Mike.
Hey, Dan.
Yes.
Dan, just wanted to let you know we're 10 minutes out.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Mike, how about you? What are you doing for training at your bank?
We do quarterly security training. We do Novafor. We do ABA. We're constantly hitting everybody with training. And when I write my quarterly trainings, I look at what's going on with technology and all of that at the time, which is one of the things that led to another out-of-channel communication for dealing with deep fakes and those types of things. At this point in time, we are kind of seeing deep fakes and activities like that from the customer standpoint coming into the bank as our most immediate threat and risk to our customers. When it comes to internal, we block things, we limit things, we monitor all traffic, all packets, and have reporting against that daily, quarterly. And so as we're watching all of those activities, we believe ourselves to be fairly well protected. And based on the question about Novafor, I did a quick Google search, and Novafor is beginning to implement artificial intelligence driven phishing tests.
Great. Are they doing any pretext, calling for their clients at all, or?
I'll have to get back with you on that.
Okay, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, that was just one other thing. The other major concern about AI is power utilization. A Google search uses 0.02 watt hours. The same AI search uses 0.4 watt hours, which means 90 billion searches results in 10 terawatt hours. It's a lot of energy.
Another big community impact of AI then is that it also hurts global warming then.
It doesn't help.
Yeah, definitely. one of the things I want to ask, because I really feel like it's a good control to get across. So when you talk to your employees about, voice cloning, about, the deep fake threat, do you talk to them about how to control it outside of, I know you're with your customers, you're asking, what we call out of wallet questions, or, you're asking for that passphrase. But how about, how about your president calling up your CFO and asking him to transfer money? How does your CFO?
Oh, the Hong Kong hack.
Yeah, the Hong Kong hack, exactly.
So we have discussed that with senior management. I've talked about those types of things with the board. There is no official policy with that, but I'm fairly certain there would be a high level of skepticism within the organization for a phone call like that.
Okay. What I would like to recommend, and I'm putting my own recommendation in here, but what I like to tell people is that voice cloning, pretty much the threat goes away if we make sure our employees know that their coworker's voice is now a threat, right? And then B, let's empower our coworkers to ask out of wallet questions of management, right? And so a manager calls you up and asks you to do something, and it's on the phone. Well, hey, when's the last time we went golfing together? And hopefully it's somebody that never golfs, right? And now you've substantially mitigated that threat. So
Dan, I can add to that.
Yes, go ahead, it's Chris.
So one thing we've done is we've kind of tried to get the training back out to in-person training. With COVID, we figured, we could do this. We can do this over Zoom. We can do, everything we can through a website. We use KnowBe4. We use these products, but the efficacy of the training, we're finding isn't as good. People don't listen as much unless you're in person and you're able to make it a little bit more informal. So we are taking initiative to actually visit our people, ask them what they have, what they've heard, and see what we can do to curtail that. Now, I know when you talk about like the board level, the Hong Kong hack, we're in the relationship business as community banks.
Yeah.
I think it should be pretty easy to know, my boss, when he says, go wire this, I'm gonna ask why. I'm gonna, hopefully I figure that out. Hopefully AI doesn't fool me. And I see him every day, right? So I think that'll help with that.
Very good. Hey, I'm noticing the time. Brian's probably, like really getting nervous. So we were going to kind of focus in on vendor management. I feel like it came up as an issue pretty well. And then we wanted to, to talk about any other kind of policies and procedures you guys might have developed yet. But I'd like to open up to see if there's any questions before we go, because we're coming up on 11 o'clock here. So I'm really, Mike, I guess I'm turning it over to you. Before I do though, Michelle, Mike, and Chris, I really appreciate your taking time out of your busy schedules. You're all three very busy people, and the fact that you're willing to share, what your bank is doing now and what you know and your take on AI with our community at large kind of reflects really well on you as professionals, if you ask me. So, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Mike?
absolutely.
Thank you for having
Thank you all. I'd like to take this opportunity. I missed this in the beginning, so I'd like to take the opportunity to invite everybody to our infotex jam. We'll be celebrating our 25th year in business. That's the 24th and 25th of July next year, so about a year from now. With that, do we have any questions? I think we have one from Nathan.
Hey, yeah. So I had a question. I don't know if we touched base on this as fully, but do you think CEOs and companies right now are actually worried about voice cloning as like a potential threat? And if they're not, should they be? And should that be something like coming up on their radar?
Michelle or Mike or Chris, I'll let whoever wants to take it. Are your CEOs worried about voice cloning?
It's something that we have brought up, in the committee meetings and things like that, but nothing that we've not started using passphrases or anything like that as of yet.
Mike, I think we already kind of talked about your angle. That it's more you're concerned about the customers. Am I correct in that?
Sure. And when I talk about a passphrase, it can be a number, a word. My passphrase, you guys can go pick up my kids from preschool, is crackhead. So, it can be anything.
Yes.
That's just simple for you to remember, and it helps to be kind of out of character as well.
Right.
Very good. Chris, anything to add?
Sorry, I was writing down Mike's passphrase.
In case you need a babysitter, he's got a 16-year-old son, so.
Yeah. From a customer perspective, this is pretty serious. The good thing is we can use what we already have in place. So, let the bank call you as a customer, right? Or, don't have them, say, hey, dial this number, right? We can spread that awareness. I'm thinking of like a wire transfer authorization, maybe, something the bank would, require a verbal commitment to. We would probably call the number on file. So that would be a little bit harder to dupe. So use what you got.
Thanks for the question, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you. And for the Brian, if you can go ahead and kill the slide deck for our last question so we can see all of our panelists clearly. Thank you all again. And our last question today, please, whoever you are.
So, as AI is further developed, do you think our jobs may soon be at risk to be replaced by AI? And if not now, how soon in the future?
Well, let me take that first, since they're trying to replace me with, my clone there. I don't think they can. So anyway, Michelle.
I'm sorry, I wasn't truly listening to that. I just was kind of taken off guard there.
So my clone asked if you think that AI will ever replace you in your position.
I don't think so. I think that you always have to have that human element. Of course, that human element needs to pay attention to what was truly being said, but I don't see it ever replacing our positions.
Mike?
I don't see it replacing my position before I retire. We are already seeing graphic artists being replaced across the board. That is soon going to be a largely non-existent job. We've seen the robots and the AI replace thousands of workers in warehouses and warehouse work. We're going to see more of that. The push would be learn how to use AI, and then it's going to be harder for AI to replace you because you'll understand how to manipulate it and how to use it. But the other concern is, what are all of these people going to do that are being displaced by the technology? And I know that goes all the way back to the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, where machines were first being rolled out.
Absolutely.
Very well put, Mike. Chris?
I mean, Mike and Michelle said it best, but leverage what you got, use it to make you better at your job. I don't see that being a problem. I think back to we did an exchange migration. We're still one of the few banks that's exchange on premise, but I had it write me a PowerShell script to migrate the servers. So that saved me a lot of time. So. I was still the one pushing the button, but use it to your advantage.
Absolutely. And with that, again, I'd like to thank our panelists, Michelle, Mike, and Chris, and of course, Dan Hadaway. Thank you all for joining us today. Really appreciate it, and make the best of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.